The rain had stopped by the time they lowered Ellen into the ground, but the sky stayed gray. I stood at the edge of the gathering, far enough back that people forgot I was there. That's how it had been for years. Ellen was the one people remembered. Ellen Hayes, corporate attorney, the woman who built things. I was just the engineer who stayed home after the layoffs. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. New stories every day. Brandon stood at the front, his hand on Jessica's shoulder. My daughter looked small next to him, her face pale against the black dress. People kept approaching them, shaking Brandon's hand, murmuring condolences as if he were the widower. He accepted each one with a solemn nod, his jaw set in what I recognized as his boardroom expression. She was the heart of everything, I heard him say to a woman I didn't recognize. The company wouldn't exist without her vision. That part was true. Ellen had taken my aerospace patents, 3 of them, designs I'd developed at Boeing before the downsizing, and helped Brandon structure his startup around them. She'd believed in him, believed in Jessica's choice. She'd spent the last year of her life making sure the paperwork was perfect, the licensing agreements airtight. I watched Brandon accept another handshake, another expression of sympathy. A crow landed on the fence behind me, its wings black against the wet wood. The service ended. People began to drift toward their cars, umbrellas opening against the returning drizzle. Brandon was talking to 2 men in expensive suits. Investors, I guessed, from their posture. Jessica had walked away, standing alone near a cluster of headstones. I moved toward her. "Jess," she turned, her eyes red. "Dad, your mother would have wanted—" "I can't right now." She glanced back toward Brandon. "I'm sorry, I just can't." She walked away before I could say anything else. I stood there, rain beginning to spot my jacket, and watched her rejoin her husband. Brandon saw me watching. He said something to the investors, then crossed the wet grass. "Richard." He stopped 3 feet away, hands in his pockets. "I know this is hard for you. It's hard for everyone. Ellen was special." He looked past me, toward the grave. "She understood what we were building, the potential." I said nothing. "I'll call you next week," he said. "We should talk about your role going forward. With the company, my role, your involvement." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Things are changing fast. We're in the middle of Series B funding." Ellen understood the direction we needed to go. A second crow joined the first on the fence. "I understand," I said. "Good." He checked his watch. "I need to get Jessica home. She's not doing well." I watched him return to my daughter, his hand finding the small of her back, guiding her toward the parking lot. The investors followed. Nobody looked back. The funeral home had arranged for a small reception at a hotel nearby. I drove there in silence, the radio off, rain streaking the windshield. The room was already full when I arrived. Colleagues of Ellen's, friends from the tennis club, people from Brandon's company. I recognized a few faces from birthday dinners, holiday gatherings, back when Jessica still returned my calls regularly. I found a chair in the corner and sat down. Richard, Margaret Walsh, Ellen's law partner, settled into the chair beside me. She was 70, sharp-eyed, wearing a black suit that looked older than Brandon's entire wardrobe. "Margaret, hell of a thing," she said quietly. "Ellen was the best attorney I ever worked with, and I've worked with plenty of bastards and geniuses. She was both." I almost smiled. "She talked about you," Margaret continued. "About the patents, about setting up the licensing structure for Brandon's company. She believed in him. She believed in protecting what mattered." Margaret's voice dropped lower. "Did you read the contract she drafted?" "I signed where she told me to sign." "That's what I thought." Margaret was quiet for a moment, watching the room. Ellen was thorough. She didn't leave things to chance. Across the room, Brandon was laughing at something one of the investors had said. Jessica stood beside him, holding a glass of wine she wasn't drinking. "What are you telling me?" I asked. "I'm telling you that Ellen was my friend for 40 years. I'm telling you she knew exactly what kind of man your son-in-law is." Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. "Read the contracts, Richard. All of them. Especially the clauses." She walked away before I could respond. I stayed another 20 minutes, then left without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive home took 15 minutes. The house was dark. I unlocked the door and stood in the entryway, listening to the silence. Ellen's office was on the second floor, the smallest bedroom converted into a workspace. Her desk was exactly as she'd left it. Laptop closed, files stacked in neat piles, a coffee mug with lipstick on the rim that I hadn't been able to wash. I sat in her chair. The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew where she kept the key. Inside, a hollowed-out law dictionary on the shelf. A joke between us about hiding things in plain sight. I found the key and opened the bottom drawer. The contracts were in a manila envelope, marked with Ellen's handwriting, RH patents, licensing and operational terms. I spread them across the desk. The licensing agreement was 43 pages. I'd signed it 18 months ago, the day after Brandon's company closed its Series A funding. Ellen had walked me through the basics. My 3 aerospace patents would be exclusively licensed to Brandon's company, Hayes Innovations, in exchange for equity, quarterly royalty payments, and a seat on the advisory board. I'd attended one advisory board meeting. Brandon had spent most of it explaining why my input wasn't relevant to current operational strategy. I kept reading. Page 17. Operational Conduct Clause. This licensing agreement remains valid contingent upon the licensee's adherence to principles of good faith operational conduct, including but not limited to transparent reporting of patent utilization, maintenance of agreed-upon equity structures, and respectful inclusion of the licensor in strategic decisions materially affecting patent deployment. In the event of documented breach of good faith conduct, the licensor retains the right to revoke the exclusive license upon 90 days written notice. I read it twice. Ellen's handwriting was in the margin. RH retains control. Always. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Reception wrapping up. We'll call Monday to schedule meeting your transition. Thanks for understanding. B. I set the phone down. Outside, the rain had stopped again. Through the window, I could see the backyard fence. Wet wood gleaming in the last gray light. 2 crows sat on the top rail, watching the house. I took my phone and photographed every page of the contract, starting with page 1. The flash reflected off the paper, casting shadows across Ellen's handwriting. When I finished, I put the contracts back in the envelope, locked the drawer, and replaced the key inside the dictionary. The crows were still there when I turned off the office light. I walked downstairs, opened the garage, and found the plastic storage bin where Ellen had kept her old case files. Inside, beneath 20 years of legal documents, I found what I was looking for, a small digital voice recorder she'd used for client interviews, still working. I sat at the kitchen table and tested it. The display lit up, ready to record. I turned it off and set it on the counter next to my keys. Through the window, the sky was fully dark now. The crows had gone. The fence stood empty, slick with rain, dividing the yard from whatever lay beyond. I washed Ellen's coffee mug, dried it, and put it in the cabinet with the others. Then I went upstairs and locked the office door behind me. Monday morning, I called Jessica. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I called again Tuesday. Same result. Wednesday, I sent a text. Can we have lunch this week? Your choice of place. She replied 6 hours later. Really busy with work stuff. Maybe next month? I didn't respond. Thursday, Brandon called. Richard, sorry it took a few days. Things have been chaotic. I understand. Listen, I'm downtown tomorrow around 2. Could you swing by the office? There's some paperwork we need to finalize. Transition stuff, like I mentioned. What kind of transition? Just housekeeping. Making sure everyone's on the same page going forward. His voice was smooth, practiced. Shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. I'll be there, I said. Great. See you at 2. He hung up before I could ask anything else. That night, I went down to the basement. Ellen had used it for storage, banker's boxes full of old case files, tax returns, mortgage documents. I found what I was looking for in the 3rd box, copies of everything related to Brandon's company, dating back to its formation. I spread the documents across the concrete floor. Articles of incorporation, operating agreement, Series A term sheet, employment contracts, and buried near the bottom, a separate folder marked Contingency Provisions, Confidential. Inside were 3 documents I'd never seen. The first was a memo from Ellen to herself, dated 14 months ago. Brandon attempting to dilute RH equity through secondary stock issuance. Rejected his proposal. He's unhappy but contained, for now. Need to monitor. The second was an email exchange between Ellen and Margaret Walsh. Ellen. Brandon asked me to simplify the licensing terms, wants to remove the conduct clause. I told him it's non-negotiable. Margaret. He knows what it means then. Good. Keep the leverage where it belongs. The third document was a handwritten note, Ellen's script on yellow legal paper. If B ever tries to remove Richard from the picture, 1. Conduct clause is triggered by disrespect exclusion. 2. Advisory board attendance, contractual right, not courtesy. 3. RH can revoke license with 90 days notice. Company loses patent rights entirely. 4. Equity lockup prevents B from selling without RH approval. Richard, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to protect you myself. Don't let him erase you. The patents are yours. I just helped you license them. You have all the power if you choose to use it. Love, E. I sat on the basement floor for a long time, the note in my hands. A pipe knocked somewhere in the walls. The furnace kicked on. I photographed everything, backed up the files to 3 separate drives, then put the originals back in the box exactly as I'd found them. Friday at 1:55 p.m., I walked into Hayes Innovations. The office was on the 4th floor of a building in the Pearl District, all glass walls and open workspace. A receptionist I didn't recognize looked up from her desk. Richard Hayes, I have a meeting with Brandon. She checked her screen. He's in the conference room. I'll let him know you're here. I waited. Through the glass walls, I could see engineers at their desks, screens glowing with CAD models and code. My patents, the water reclamation system, the modular filtration array, the pressure optimization algorithm, were the foundation of everything they were building. Brandon had hired 20 people in the last year. None of them knew my name. Richard. Brandon emerged from a hallway smiling, hand extended. I shook it. Come on back. The conference room had a view of the river. Jessica was already there, sitting at the far end of the table. She looked up when I entered, then looked away. Jess, I said. Hi, Dad. Brandon closed the door and sat down across from me. He slid a document across the table. 15 pages, stapled, with colored tabs marking signature lines. What is this? I asked. Advisory board restructuring. He leaned back in his chair. We're moving to a streamlined governance model. More agile, better for our growth phase. The board advised us to consolidate decision-making authority. Who advised that? Our investors, the people who actually understand this space. He tapped the document. What this does is transition you from an active advisory role to an emeritus position. You keep your equity, you keep quarterly royalty payments. Actually, we're increasing them to $3,000 a month, and you're released from any operational obligations. Released. It simplifies things for everyone. You've been through a lot, Richard. Ellen's death. The stress of trying to stay involved in a business that's frankly moved beyond. He caught himself. That's evolved rapidly. This lets you step back gracefully. I looked at Jessica. She was studying her hands. What does emeritus mean in practical terms? I asked. You're still associated with the company. Founder's father-in-law, original patent holder. We'll list you on the website, mention you in press materials, but no meetings, no operational input. Clean separation. And if I don't sign? Brandon's smile thinned. Then we have a problem. The board has already approved the restructuring. If you refuse to participate, it creates legal ambiguity that our investors won't tolerate. They'll see it as obstruction. Obstruction of what? Of progress. His voice hardened slightly. Look, Richard, I know this is emotional. Ellen just died. You're grieving. You're looking for ways to stay connected to her legacy. I get it. But this company is her legacy, and the best way to honor that is to let it grow without... He stopped. Without me, I finished. Without complications. I picked up the document and flipped through it. Section 4. 3. Licensor waives all rights to operational consultation, board attendance, and strategic review. Section 6. 1. Licensor acknowledges that equity stake is non-voting and subject to dilution in future funding rounds. I set it down. I need to read this carefully, I said, with a lawyer. Of course. Brandon's smile returned. Take the weekend. But we need this signed by Monday. The investors are expecting closure. Monday. Close of business. He stood. Jessica, anything you want to add? My daughter finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Dad, this is what's best, for everyone. Mom would want you to… She stopped. She'd want you to be okay, not fighting battles you can't win. What battles? I asked. She didn't answer. Brandon walked me to the elevator. As the doors opened, he put his hand on my shoulder. One more thing, he said quietly. Ellen was the bridge between us. She understood both worlds, your engineering legacy, my business vision. With her gone, we don't have that translator anymore. You and I, we don't speak the same language. This agreement is the kindest solution for everyone. The doors started to close. He held them open. Sign it, Richard. Let this go. The doors closed. I drove home through Friday traffic, the unsigned document on the passenger seat. Rain started again as I pulled into the driveway. I sat in the car, engine off, watching water run down the windshield. Inside, I made coffee and spread the document across the kitchen table next to Ellen's original licensing agreement. It took me an hour to find all the discrepancies. The increased royalty payments came with a clause capping total lifetime royalties at $180,000, less than I was already owed under Ellen's original terms. The emeritus language explicitly revoked my right to trigger the conduct clause, and buried in Section 9, or 4, was a poison pill. In the event of licensor's death, all patent rights transfer permanently to Hayes Innovations with no reversion to estate or heirs. Brandon was trying to erase me and make sure Jessica inherited nothing. I took out my phone and called Margaret Walsh. Richard, she answered on the second ring. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I need a lawyer. You have one. Ellen put me on retainer for you 6 months ago. She had a feeling you'd need help eventually. I heard paper rustling. What did Brandon do? I told her about the meeting, the document, the Monday deadline. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, don't sign anything. Forward me the agreement tonight. I'll have a response drafted by Sunday. What kind of response? The kind that reminds Brandon exactly what Ellen built into those contracts. Her voice was cold. He thinks you're alone now. He's wrong. Margaret, Ellen was my friend. I watched her draft those protections specifically because she knew this day would come. She knew Brandon would wait until she was gone to make his move. A pause. We're not letting him win. What do I do? Tomorrow, go through every piece of paper Ellen left. Bank statements, emails, company communications. Anything that shows how Brandon's treated you since the company started. Document everything. Meeting notes, advisory board minutes, correspondence. I need to build a case that he's already violated the conduct clause. How long will this take? As long as it takes. Margaret's voice softened slightly. Richard, Ellen spent the last year of her life making sure you'd have the tools to fight this. Don't waste what she gave you. I hung up and sat in the kitchen until the coffee went cold. Outside, the rain continued. A crow landed on the back fence, shook water from its wings, and settled in to watch the house. I went back to the basement and started pulling boxes. By midnight, I had 12 folders organized by category, email correspondence showing Brandon's pattern of excluding me from technical decisions, advisory board minutes documenting his dismissal of my input, financial statements showing how he'd structured equity to minimize my voting power, patent utilization reports Ellen had quietly compiled, proving the company's entire product line depended on my original designs. I photographed every page. At 2:30 a.m., I uploaded everything to an encrypted cloud drive, emailed the link to Margaret, and sent her Brandon's unsigned agreement. Her response came at 2:47 a.m. Got it. Don't contact Brandon until you hear from me. Sleep if you can. I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table as the sky turned gray, then pale blue. The crows returned to the fence at dawn. 3 of them now, watching the house like they knew something was about to break. My phone buzzed at 8:15 a.m., a text from Jessica. "Dad, please just sign the papers. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I turned off the phone. Through the window, the crows lifted off together, circling once before disappearing over the roofline. I opened Ellen's contracts again and reread the clause she'd underlined. The licensor retains the right to revoke the exclusive license upon 90 days written notice. 90 days. I made fresh coffee and waited for Margaret to call. Margaret called Sunday afternoon. "I've reviewed everything. Brandon's violated the conduct clause at least 7 times in the past 18 months. Exclusion from technical meetings, failure to provide proper financial reporting, equity manipulation without consultation. Any one of these would be sufficient grounds for license revocation." I was standing in Ellen's office, looking out at the empty street. What's the next step? We send him a formal notice of breach. Give him 30 days to cure the violations, or we trigger the revocation clause. Once we do that, the clock starts. He either negotiates in good faith or loses the patents entirely. He'll fight. Of course he will. But Ellen built this structure specifically to withstand a fight. The licensing agreement is ironclad. She paused. "Richard, once we send this notice, there's no going back. Brandon will escalate. Jessica will be caught in the middle. Are you prepared for that?" Through the window, I watched a neighbor walk his dog. Normal Sunday afternoon. Everything ordinary. "Send it," I said. "I'll draft it tonight. You'll have it for review tomorrow morning." After she hung up, I tried calling Jessica one more time. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Monday. I didn't hear from Brandon. Tuesday. Nothing. Wednesday morning, Margaret's notice was delivered to Hayes Innovations by courier at 9:47 a.m. Brandon called at 9:51. "What the fuck is this?" "It's a notice of breach," I said calmly. "You violated the conduct terms of the licensing agreement. You have 30 days to cure." "You can't be serious." Ellen would never. Ellen wrote those terms specifically to prevent what you're doing. I'm trying to build a company. Your company, technically, since you seem to care so much about ownership. Every decision I've made has been to protect the value of those patents. By excluding me from decisions, by trying to strip my equity, by running a business like an adult instead of a retirement hobby. His voice was tight, controlled. "You're making a mistake, Richard. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice." He was quiet for a moment. "Jessica knows you're doing this. She's upset. Let me talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to you. She thinks you're trying to destroy everything her mother built. Ellen built protections for me, not for you. Ellen's dead." His voice went flat. "And you're about to learn what happens when you pick a fight you can't win." He hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that. The house was silent except for the refrigerator humming. Outside, the sky was white, colorless. No crows today. The 30 days passed slowly. I tried to establish a routine. Coffee at 6, walk around the neighborhood, lunch at noon. Afternoons sorting through Ellen's files, documenting everything Margaret might need. Dinner alone, evening news. Bed by 10. Jessica never called. I saw on her Instagram, I'd started checking it obsessively, that she and Brandon had gone to Cannon Beach for a weekend. She posted a photo of them on the sand, Brandon's arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling. The caption, "Grateful for this man and the life we're building together." 43 people liked it. I wasn't one of them. Margaret checked in twice a week. No response from Brandon yet. That's typical. He's consulting his own attorneys, trying to find a way around the clause. He won't find one. What if he just ignores the notice? Then we proceed to the next step, formal revocation, but I don't think he'll ignore it. The investors won't let him. They've put $6 million into a company whose entire patent portfolio could vanish in 60 days. Good. Richard. Her tone shifted. How are you holding up? I'm fine. Ellen worried about this part. The isolation. She knew Brandon would turn Jessica against you if it came to this. Jessica made her choice. She's 35 years old and terrified of losing the life she's built. That doesn't make her evil, just human. I didn't respond. Call me if you need anything, Margaret said, and hung up. On day 22, I got a letter from Brandon's attorney. It was polite, measured, and offered a settlement. I would withdraw the breach notice in exchange for $400,000 and guaranteed royalty payments of $4,000 per month for 10 years. All operational conflicts would be resolved through third-party mediation. I forwarded it to Margaret. She called within an hour. It's a lowball offer designed to look generous. The total value is $880,000 over 10 years. Under Ellen's original terms, you'd get at least $2 million in royalties alone. Plus, you'd retain the right to revoke the license if Brandon violates terms again. He's trying to buy you out cheap. What do I tell him? Nothing, I'll respond. We reject the offer and proceed with revocation proceedings. Margaret, Richard, listen to me. Brandon is betting that you'll fold because you're lonely and you miss your daughter and you don't want to fight. He's betting that you're weak. Prove him wrong. I closed my eyes. Okay. Good. I'll draft the response today. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I went down to the basement and started going through the last box of Ellen's files. Miscellaneous documents she'd kept for reference. Old contracts. Correspondence with clients. Near the bottom, I found something that made me stop. It was a packet of emails between Brandon and a company called Cascade Environmental Systems, dated 8 months ago. The subject line, sublicensing agreement, Hayes filtration patents. I read through them twice to make sure I understood. Brandon had sublicensed 2 of my patents, the modular filtration array and the pressure optimization algorithm, to a third-party manufacturer without authorization. The sublicense generated $340,000 in upfront fees plus ongoing royalties, none of which had been reported to me. The licensing agreement Ellen had drafted was explicit. Any sublicensing required written consent from the patent holder, me. I photographed every page, then called Margaret's cell phone even though it was 2:30 in the morning. She answered on the 4th ring. This better be important. Brandon sublicensed my patents without authorization. I found the contracts. Silence. Then, tell me everything. I walked her through it, the emails, the fees, the dates. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. This changes everything, she said finally. Sublicensing without consent isn't just a breach of conduct. It's material breach of contract. We're not talking about revocation anymore. We're talking about fraud. What does that mean? It means we can demand immediate termination of the licensing agreement. Not 90 days. Immediate. And we can pursue damages. Every dollar Brandon made from that sublicense, plus penalties. My hand was shaking. I set the phone on speaker and sat down on the concrete floor. How do we proceed? I asked. I need those contracts. Bring them to my office first thing tomorrow morning. We'll file an emergency motion for breach and request a temporary restraining order preventing any further patent use until the matter is resolved. How long will that take? Days, not weeks. Once a judge sees unauthorized sublicensing, they'll act fast. Brandon's attorneys will try to fight it, but they won't have a defense. She paused. Richard, this is going to get ugly. Brandon will accuse you of corporate sabotage. Jessica will be forced to choose sides publicly. Are you ready? I looked around the basement. Boxes of Ellen's life, organized and labeled, everything in its place. She'd known. She'd kept these emails deliberately, left them where I'd find them eventually. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Good. See you at 9. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, I showered, dressed in the suit I'd worn to Ellen's funeral, and put the sublicensing contracts in a leather portfolio she'd given me for my 50th birthday. The crows were back on the fence, 4 of them now, lined up like witnesses. I drove to Margaret's office in the financial district. She was waiting in the conference room, reading glasses on, yellow legal pad already covered in notes. Let me see them. I handed over the portfolio. She read through each document carefully, occasionally making notes. When she finished, she looked up. This is better than I hoped. The sublicense agreement explicitly references your patents by number. Brandon can't claim ignorance or administrative error. He knew exactly what he was doing. She closed the portfolio. We'll file this afternoon. The judge should issue a preliminary ruling by Friday. And then? Then Brandon's company loses the right to use your patents until this is resolved. If he continues operating, he's in contempt. His investors will pull out. The company will collapse unless he settles. What kind of settlement? Full reversion of patent rights to you. Repayment of all sublicensing fees. Dissolution of his equity in any technology derived from your work. Margaret's expression was hard. He tried to erase you, Richard. Now we erase him. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, vindication, anger. Instead, I just felt tired. What about Jessica? I asked. Margaret's face softened. I don't know. That's the part Ellen couldn't protect you from. We filed the motion at 3 p.m. Margaret's paralegal hand-delivered copies to Brandon's attorney and to Hayes Innovations directly. I went home and waited. The call came at 5:17 p.m. Not Brandon this time. Jessica. Dad. Her voice was shaking. What did you do? I'm protecting what's mine. You're destroying everything. Brandon's investors are threatening to pull funding. The board called an emergency meeting. Everyone's panicking. Brandon stole from me, Jess. He sublicensed my patents without permission and kept the money. That's not... He wouldn't... She stopped. Mom would be ashamed of you. The words hit harder than I expected. Your mother wrote those contracts specifically so I could do this, I said quietly. She knew what Brandon was. She was protecting me. She was protecting us. The family, the company. You're tearing it all apart because you're lonely and you can't accept that you're not relevant anymore. Jessica, don't call me again. She hung up. I sat in the kitchen as the light faded. The crows lifted off the fence one by one, circling the house before disappearing into the dusk. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. An email from Margaret. Judge issued preliminary restraining order. Hayes Innovations prohibited from using your patents pending resolution. Hearing scheduled for next Wednesday. We won the first round. I read it 3 times, then set the phone down. Outside, the street was dark. No lights in any windows, no movement anywhere. I went upstairs to Ellen's office and locked the door behind me. On her desk, the manila envelope sat exactly where I'd left it. Contracts inside, her handwriting on the tab. I opened the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet and found the second envelope, the one I hadn't touched yet. It was marked, for Richard, open if you need courage. Inside was a single photograph. Ellen and me on our wedding day, 36 years ago. On the back, her handwriting, we built everything together. Don't let anyone tell you different. Love, E. I put the photo in my wallet. Then I turned off the light and went downstairs to wait for Wednesday. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the Multnomah County Courthouse. I arrived at 9:30, wearing the same suit, carrying the leather portfolio. Margaret was waiting on the steps. Brandon's attorney filed a counter-motion last night. Claims you're engaging in bad faith interference with a legitimate business. They're arguing the sublicense was implied under the original agreement's operational latitude clause. Was it? No. Ellen was very specific about sublicensing rights, but they're desperate. She held the door open. Stay calm in there. Answer questions directly. Don't volunteer information. Let me handle Brandon's attorney. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Brandon was already seated at the defendant's table with 2 attorneys in expensive suits. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Jessica was in the gallery, 3rd row back. Our eyes met for a second before she looked away. Judge Sandra Kern took the bench at 10:03. She was 60, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She reviewed the file in silence for 2 minutes before looking up. This is a preliminary hearing on plaintiff's motion for breach of contract and unauthorized sublicensing. Mr. Walsh, you're representing the plaintiff? Margaret stood. Yes, Your Honor. Margaret Walsh, for Richard Hayes. And for the defendant? One of Brandon's attorneys rose. David Chen, Your Honor, representing Hayes Innovations and Brandon Clark. Judge Kern nodded. Ms. Walsh, this is your motion. Proceed. Margaret walked the judge through the licensing agreement, pointing out the sublicensing clause and the conduct provisions. Then she introduced the sublicensing contracts I'd found, each one marked as evidence, each one showing Brandon's signature authorizing patent use without my consent. Your Honor, the defendant generated over $300,000 in fees from these unauthorized sublicenses. The plaintiff, who holds the underlying patents, received nothing and was never informed. Chen stood. Your Honor, if I may, the licensing agreement grants Hayes Innovations broad operational latitude to commercialize the patents. The sublicenses in question were standard industry practice, well within the scope of Mr. Chen. Judge Kern removed her glasses. Section 7, 3 of the licensing agreement explicitly states, Licensee shall not sublicense, assign or transfer patent rights without prior written consent of licensor. Did your client obtain written consent? The operational latitude clause in Section 4.2 provides, Section 4.2 addresses day-to-day business decisions. Section 7.3 addresses fundamental property rights. They're not in conflict. She looked at Margaret. Does the plaintiff have documentation proving lack of consent? Yes, Your Honor. Margaret handed the clerk a bound folder. Email correspondence showing Mr. Hayes was systematically excluded from patent-related decisions. Meeting minutes showing his removal from technical discussions. Financial statements provided to Mr. Hayes that omit all sublicensing revenue. Judge Kern paged through the documents. The courtroom was silent except for paper rustling. Mr. Chen, I'm inclined to grant the preliminary injunction. Does your client have any evidence that Mr. Hayes consented to these sublicenses? Chen conferred with Brandon in a whisper. Then, Your Honor, we request a continuance to provide additional documentation showing the operational understanding between the parties. How long? 2 weeks? No. Judge Kern closed the folder. You've had a week since the motion was filed. If you had evidence of consent, you would have presented it today. She turned to Margaret. Ms. Walsh, what specific relief is your client seeking? Immediate cessation of all patent use by Hayes Innovations pending resolution of the underlying breach, accounting of all sublicensing revenues, and reversion of exclusive licensing rights to Mr. Hayes. Brandon leaned forward and whispered urgently to Chen. Chen shook his head. Judge Kern made a note. I'm issuing a preliminary injunction. Hayes Innovations is prohibited from using the patents described in Exhibit A, pending a full hearing on the breach claim. That hearing will be scheduled within 30 days. Mr. Chen, your client may continue operations using any technology not derived from Mr. Hayes's patents, but the 3 patents specified in the licensing agreement are off limits as of now. Your Honor, that will effectively shut down my client's business. The entire product line depends on... Then your client should have obtained proper consent before sublicensing someone else's intellectual property. She signed the order. Injunction is effective immediately. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. In the hallway outside, Brandon cornered me while Margaret was talking to the clerk. You just killed 20 jobs, Richard. 20 people who have mortgages and families. You feel good about that? I feel like I protected what's mine. Ellen would be ashamed. Ellen wrote the contract you violated. His jaw tightened. This isn't over. I'll fight this all the way to the state Supreme Court if I have to. With what money? Your investors are going to pull out the second they hear about this injunction. You don't know that. I know exactly that. They invested in a company with a patent portfolio. You just lost access to the patents. Jessica appeared behind Brandon. Her face was pale. Dad. Jess, can we talk? Please? Brandon put his hand on her shoulder. Jessica, you don't have to. I need to talk to my father. She looked at him. Alone. He hesitated, then walked away toward his attorneys. Jessica and I stood in the hallway while people moved around us, lawyers, plaintiffs, court staff. I didn't know, she said finally, about the sublicenses, about the money. I know. Brandon said the agreement gave him operational flexibility. He said Mom understood that running a company meant making fast decisions without bureaucracy. Did your mother ever tell you that? Jessica's eyes filled. I didn't ask. I just believed him. We were quiet for a moment. What happens now? She asked. That depends on Brandon. If he negotiates in good faith, we can find a solution. If he keeps fighting, the company collapses. And us? And I looked at her, 35 years old, wearing the pearls Ellen had given her for college graduation, standing in a courthouse hallway choosing between her husband and her father. I don't know, I said. Margaret appeared at my elbow. Richard, we should go. Chen wants to talk settlement. Jessica stepped back. I'm sorry, Dad. For what I said on the phone, about Mom being ashamed. I know you are. She walked away, back toward Brandon and his attorneys. I watched her go. You okay? Margaret asked. Let's talk to Chen. We met in a conference room on the 3rd floor. Chen sat across from us, legal pad in front of him. No Brandon. My client is prepared to offer a revised settlement, Chen began. Immediate payment of all sublicensing revenues to Mr. Hayes, that's $340,000. Restoration of his advisory board seat with full voting rights, and a formal apology for the administrative oversights that led to this misunderstanding. Administrative oversights. Margaret's voice was flat. Your client systematically excluded mine from patent decisions, manipulated equity structures, and conducted unauthorized sublicensing. Those aren't oversights. That's fraud. That's a strong word. It's the correct word. She slid a document across the table. Here's our counteroffer. Full reversion of all patent rights to Mr. Hayes, dissolution of the existing licensing agreement, and a forensic accounting of Hayes Innovations to determine total damages, not just sublicensing fees, but lost equity value, diverted business opportunities, and compensatory damages for breach of fiduciary duty. Chen looked at the document without touching it. That would destroy the company. The company is built on stolen intellectual property. Maybe it should be destroyed. Ms. Walsh, your client had every opportunity to operate in good faith. He chose not to. Now he pays the price. Chen picked up the document and read it. When he finished, he was quiet for a long time. I need to discuss this with my client, he said finally. You have 48 hours, Margaret said. After that, we proceed to the full hearing and pursue criminal fraud charges. We left him sitting there. That night, I couldn't sleep again. At midnight, I was sitting at the kitchen table when my phone buzzed. An email from an address I didn't recognize. Email protected. The subject line, Dad. I opened it. I found the files. The emails between Brandon and Cascade Environmental. The meeting notes where he talked about phasing you out. The financial projections that assumed you'd be gone by Q2 2020. He lied to me about everything. I'm leaving him. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, but I can't stay. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I said those things. Mom did protect you. I see that now. I don't know if you can forgive me. I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know. Jessica. I read it 3 times. Then I replied, you can stay here as long as you need. Your room is exactly how you left it. I hit send before I could second guess it. The response came 2 minutes later. Thank you. Wednesday morning, Chen called Margaret. Brandon was accepting the terms. Full reversion of patent rights, forensic accounting, dissolution of licensing agreement. Hayes Innovations would be restructured under new ownership or shut down entirely. Brandon was resigning as CEO effective immediately. He's destroyed, Margaret told me. His investors are pulling out. The board has already voted to terminate him. He's got nothing left except whatever personal assets he managed to hide. And Jessica? I heard she moved out, filed for separation yesterday. I looked out the kitchen window. The crows were on the fence, 5 of them now, perched in a line. When do I get the patents back? I asked. Paperwork should be finalized by end of week. After that, they're yours free and clear. You can license them to whoever you want, sell them outright, or just sit on them. What would you do? Margaret was quiet for a moment. Ellen spent a year protecting your rights. Don't waste what she gave you. Find someone worthy of those patents and build something that matters. Okay. Richard? Her voice softened. You did good. Ellen would be proud. After she hung up, I sat at the table for a long time. At 3 p.m., I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Jessica getting out of a Prius I didn't recognize. Rental, probably. She had 2 suitcases. I opened the door before she could knock. Hi, Dad. Hi, Jess. We stood there for a moment, neither of us knowing what to say. Your room's upstairs, I said finally. Second door on the right, same as always. She nodded, picked up the suitcases, and went inside. I closed the door and locked it. Outside, the crows lifted off the fence one by one, circling the house twice before flying east toward the river, their wings black against the white sky. I walked upstairs and knocked on Jessica's door. Come in, she said. She was sitting on the bed, the same bed she'd slept in through high school, the same quilt Ellen had made. She looked smaller somehow, younger. I'm making coffee, I said. You want some? Yeah, that would be good. I went back downstairs, made a pot, and brought 2 cups up. We sat in her old room and drank coffee and didn't talk about Brandon or the company or what came next. For now, that was enough. Jessica stayed for 3 days without leaving the house. She slept late, Ate little, spent hours on her laptop in her old room. I didn't ask questions. On the fourth morning, she came downstairs while I was making breakfast. "Brandon wants to meet," she said. "He's been texting, says he needs to explain things." I cracked eggs into a pan. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." She sat at the table. "Part of me thinks I owe him that much. We were married for 6 years. You don't owe him anything. Maybe I owe it to myself, to hear him out so I can move on." She looked at me. "Would you come with me?" I turned off the stove. "Where?" "Coffee shop. Public place. Tomorrow at 10. Her hands were shaking slightly. I don't trust myself to stay calm if I'm alone with him. "Okay," I said. "I'll be there." The coffee shop was in the Pearl District, 3 blocks from Brandon's office. Jessica and I arrived early and took a table in the back corner. She ordered chamomile tea she didn't drink. Brandon walked in at 10:07. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, unshaven, wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down. Not the man who'd commanded boardrooms. He stopped when he saw me. "I asked to meet with Jessica, and I asked him to come," Jessica said. "Sit down or leave." He sat. For a moment, nobody spoke. The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. Someone's laptop played folk music at low volume. "I'm sorry," Brandon said finally, "for all of it. I got caught up in growth targets and investor pressure, and I made decisions I shouldn't have made." "You sublicensed my father's patents without permission," Jessica said. "You made $300,000 and hid it from everyone. It was going to be disclosed in the next quarterly report. The timing was just, you tried to force him out of the company with that restructuring agreement. I was trying to simplify governance, make us more attractive to Series B investors." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Stop lying." Brandon looked at her, then at me. "Richard poisoned you against me. He's been looking for an excuse to destroy what we built ever since Ellen died." "What we built?" I kept my voice level. "You built a company on my patents. Ellen structured it so you couldn't steal them. You tried anyway." "I didn't steal anything. Those patents were licensed properly. Ellen and I worked out the terms together, and Ellen put a conduct clause in the contract specifically because she didn't trust you," I said. "She told her law partner 6 months before she died that you were trying to push me out." Brandon went pale. "That's not—" "I have the emails." I took out my phone and pulled up the correspondence between Ellen and Margaret. August 14th, 2019. Ellen writes, "Brandon asked me to simplify the licensing terms. Wants to remove the conduct clause. I told him it's non-negotiable." September 3rd. "He knows what it means. He's angry but contained. For now." I set the phone on the table. Brandon stared at it. "She knew," Jessica said quietly. "Mom knew you were planning this. She misunderstood my intentions. I was trying to protect the company from operational complexity, and she interpreted it as, 'You called my father a useless old man the night of her funeral.'" Jessica's voice broke. "I heard you in the parking lot, talking to those investors. You said the good part of the family died with her." Brandon closed his eyes. "You weren't supposed to hear that, but I did, and I told myself you were just stressed, just grieving, just trying to hold things together. I made excuses for you for months." She wiped her eyes. "I chose you over my father because I thought you were building something that mattered, but you were just building something for yourself." "Jessica, when did you decide to cut him out? Before we got married, or after?" Brandon didn't answer. "Answer me." "It wasn't like that. In the beginning, I respected Richard's contributions, but as the company grew, his involvement became a liability. Investors don't want family drama. They want clean cap tables and decisive leadership. I was trying to position us for long-term success. By erasing the person who created the technology you're selling, by making hard choices that Ellen understood, even if Richard didn't." Jessica stood up. "You're still lying, even now. I'm telling you the truth. The truth is, you used my mother's death as an opportunity to steal from my father. You manipulated me into taking your side. You built our entire life on fraud." She picked up her purse. "I'm filing for divorce. My attorney will contact you next week." Brandon grabbed her wrist. "Jess, wait. Let go of me." He held on for a second longer, then released her. She stepped back, rubbing her wrist. "You're making a mistake," Brandon said. Without me, you have nothing. No career, no income, no... I have my father, Jessica said. That's more than you ever had. She walked out. I stood to follow. Richard. Brandon's voice stopped me. This is your fault. All of it. No, I said. This is yours. I left him sitting there. Outside, Jessica was leaning against the building, breathing hard. I put my hand on her shoulder. You okay? No. She looked at me. Did Mom really write those emails? Yes. Why didn't she tell me? Maybe she thought you needed to figure it out yourself. Jessica was quiet for a moment. I wasted 6 years with him. You didn't waste them. You learned something. What did I learn? That you're stronger than you thought. She almost smiled. That's a dad answer. It's the truth. We walked back to my car in silence. As I unlocked the doors, Jessica said, The patents. Now that you have them back, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. You could license them again. To someone better. Maybe. She got in the passenger seat. Mom would want them to be used for something good. Something that matters. I started the engine. I know. That night, Margaret called. The forensic accounting is complete. Brandon diverted over $600,000 through the sublicensing scheme. Not just the $340 we knew about. There were 2 additional agreements he buried in subsidiary paperwork. Can we recover it? Most of it. His personal assets are limited, but the company's insurance will cover the fraud damages. You're looking at a settlement around $800,000, plus full patent reversion. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Brandon's attorney is cooperating. He knows they can't fight this. After she hung up, I went upstairs. Jessica's door was open. She was sitting on her bed, looking at her phone. Brandon's posting on Instagram, she said, about resilience and new beginnings, like he's the victim in this. Let him post. People are going to believe him. Some people will. The people who matter won't. She set the phone down. Dad, thank you. For what? For not giving up. For fighting when I wouldn't. I nodded. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next. I closed her door and went to Ellen's office. The manila envelope was still on the desk. I opened it and pulled out the wedding photo. Ellen and me, 36 years ago, standing on the courthouse steps. On the back, her handwriting. We built everything together. I put the photo in a frame and set it on the desk where I could see it. Outside, the crows had settled on the fence for the night. 5 of them, silent, watching the house. I turned off the light and went downstairs to lock the doors. 3 months later, the settlement came through. $817,000, deposited into an account I'd opened specifically for this purpose. The patents reverted to my name. Hayes Innovations filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks after Brandon resigned. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Jessica moved out in November, into a small apartment in Selwood. She'd started working at Margaret's firm, paralegal position, learning the trade from the ground up. We had dinner every Sunday, usually at my place. She didn't talk about Brandon. I didn't ask. The divorce was finalized in December. She came home that night, and we drank the bottle of wine Ellen had been saving for Jessica's 40th birthday. It seemed appropriate. In January, I received an email from Dr. Sarah Chen, director of the Pacific Northwest Clean Water Initiative, a nonprofit cooperative developing water treatment technology for underserved communities. Mr. Hayes, I was a colleague of your late wife's on the Portland Environmental Council. Ellen spoke often about your filtration patents and their potential applications for water access projects. With Hayes Innovations dissolved, I wanted to reach out regarding possible licensing opportunities. We're specifically interested in the modular filtration array for deployment in rural Oregon and eastern Washington. We operate on a cooperative model. No private investors, no profit motive, just sustainable technology for communities that need it. Would you be willing to discuss this? Respectfully, Dr. Sarah Chen. I read the email 3 times, then forwarded it to Margaret. She called within the hour. This is legitimate. I know Sarah Chen. She does good work. If you license to them, you'd be setting royalty rates low enough to be sustainable, but high enough to fund ongoing development. It's exactly the kind of thing Ellen would have wanted. What kind of money are we talking about? For a non-profit cooperative? maybe $30,000 a year in royalties. Not enough to retire on, but enough to fund scholarships or research grants in Ellen's name. I looked out the kitchen window. January rain, gray sky, the fence empty of crows. They'd stopped coming in December, as if their watch had ended. "Set up a meeting," I said. I met Dr. Chen at a coffee shop near Reed College. She was 45, sharp-eyed, carrying a worn leather bag full of technical specifications and deployment budgets. "Your filtration design is elegant," she said after we'd ordered. "Most commercial systems prioritize throughput over sustainability. Yours does both. That's rare." Ellen helped me refine it. The original aerospace application was different, but she saw how it could be adapted for water treatment. She was right. Sarah spread diagrams across the table. "We've been working with communities in Harney County and along the Deschutes River. Agricultural runoff, outdated infrastructure, contaminated wells. Your system could serve over 2,000 households at a fraction of the cost of conventional treatment. What do you need from me? Exclusive licensing for non-profit applications. We'll handle manufacturing through union shops in Portland, installation through local contractors, maintenance through cooperative training programs. You'd receive quarterly royalty payments and annual impact reports showing exactly where the systems are deployed. And if it works, if you scale up, then we expand. Idaho, Montana, rural California, eventually indigenous communities in Alaska. But we start small, prove the model, build trust." She looked at me directly. "Your technology can matter, Mr. Hayes, but only if you're willing to let it go." I thought about Ellen's note. "Don't let him erase you." I thought about Brandon, sitting in that coffee shop 3 months ago, still lying. I thought about Jessica, rebuilding her life one day at a time. "I'm willing," I said. We signed the licensing agreement in March. Margaret drafted terms that protected the cooperative's mission while ensuring the patents couldn't be sold to commercial entities. Sarah's organization paid the first royalty installment, $7,400, on April 1st. I used the money to establish the Ellen Hayes Memorial Scholarship for women studying environmental engineering at Portland State University. Jessica helped me set up the foundation paperwork. Margaret handled the legal structure pro bono. The first scholarship was awarded in May. A 22-year-old named Christina Morales, first-generation college student, double major in civil engineering and environmental science. She sent me a handwritten thank you note that I pinned to the bulletin board in Ellen's office. In June, I sold the house. It was too big, too full of memories I didn't need anymore. Jessica helped me pack. We found things I'd forgotten: Ellen's tennis racket, my old drafting table from Boeing, boxes of Jessica's childhood drawings. "You keeping any of this?" she asked, holding up a crayon portrait she'd made of the three of us when she was 7. "Just the important things." I kept the wedding photo, Ellen's contracts, the first royalty check from the cooperative. Everything else went to donation or storage. I bought a small cabin outside Hood River, 2 bedrooms, view of Mount Hood, 20 minutes from the Columbia River Gorge. Jessica visited the first weekend and pronounced it aggressively rustic but acceptable. We sat on the deck that evening, watching the light change on the mountain. "Mom would like it here," Jessica said. "I think so too." "You ever regret it?" "Fighting Brandon, I mean. Blowing everything up." I thought about it. "No." "Even though it cost you the company? All that money he could have paid you if you'd just signed his agreement? It would have cost me more to let him win." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You saw it when you needed to. That's generous. It's true. The sun dropped behind the trees. The mountain turned pink, then gray, then invisible in the gathering dark. I heard Brandon move to Seattle," Jessica said. "Some fintech startup hired him as a consultant. Good for him. You don't care?" "Not anymore," she smiled. "That's growth, Dad. That's exhaustion." We sat there until the stars came out. In August, Dr. Chen sent the first impact report. 12 filtration systems deployed across 3 counties. 418 households with access to clean water. Contamination levels down by 73% in test sites. 3 local contractors trained in installation and maintenance. There were photographs, families filling water jugs, children playing near wells, engineers in hard hats reviewing schematics. At the bottom of the report, a handwritten note from Sarah. This is Ellen's legacy as much as yours. Thank you for trusting us with it. I pinned the report next to Christina's thank you note. September brought the first real cold. I woke early one morning to frost on the deck railing and fog in the valley below. I made coffee and carried it outside, wrapped in Ellen's old flannel robe that I'd kept. A deer was standing at the tree line, watching the cabin. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then it turned and disappeared into the fog. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Brunch Sunday? I'm bringing someone I want you to meet. I smiled and replied, Your place or mine? Yours. I want to see if the rustic cabin has killed you yet. Still alive. See you Sunday. I set the phone down and watched the fog lift slowly off the valley. The mountain emerged, white peak against blue sky, exactly as it had been for thousands of years before I arrived, and would be for thousands after I left. Inside, on the desk in the second bedroom, Ellen's contracts sat in their manila envelope, filed and finished. Next to them, the licensing agreement with the Pacific Northwest Clean Water Initiative, signed and notarized. Above the desk, the framed wedding photo, Ellen and me, 36 years ago, building something together. I finished my coffee and went back inside. There was work to do, emails to answer, scholarship applications to review, a site visit to schedule with Sarah's team in October. Life, continuing forward, shaped by choices made and choices still to come. Outside, the fog finished clearing. The valley opened up below, green and gold in the morning light, stretching toward the river and the roads beyond. I sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, and began.